Okay, so let's take a look today at integer operations, NS15. First of all, we always work from left to right. So, left to right. Just like we read from the left side to the right side, we do our math from the left side to the right side. So, order of operations for integers is the same as operations for positive numbers. So first we do grouping, or parentheses. Okay. Then we do exponents, multiply, or divide, add, or subtract. Okay? I know I wrote that kind of sloppy right there. So here's how this works. First, we talk about parentheses or grouping. I call it parentheses, guys. So I say PEMDAS instead of GEMDAS. But the premise behind it is all still the same. What that means is we're going to group, or parentheses, anything that has symbols like that, or like these kind of brackets, or these kind of brackets. Those are all the same thing. So if you're doing grouping in GEMDAS, we're going to say grandma. Okay, I have a different one, and I'll tell you that one in a minute. So, this one says grandma, then exponents, we know are that little number right there is an exponent. And then we're going to write excused. And we say multiply. Well, we know multiply means this. It can also be this. And if I'm typing it on the computer, it's that little symbol that looks like that. That is not a multiply symbol, but it is what comes up on our computers when we type it, okay? This is actually called an asterisk. Okay, this is not a multiplication sign. It's called an asterisk. But we use that when we're typing because we don't actually have a multiplication or one of the two multiplication symbols that will come up correctly. This just looks like an X, and this comes up as a period or a dot that can also be mistaken as a decimal point. So it comes up like this when it's typed. All right, that we're going to say for M is my. Divide. Well, we know that this is the symbol for divide. We also know that on the computer we do a forward slash is what this is called, this symbol right here. Divide can also be this part right there of a fraction. So we could say 1/12. That line also means divide. We also have, for division, the algorithm, okay, bracket that we use. So these are all meaning to divide if you see them. For our purposes for GEMDAS, this is your main one. And you might see this one or that one. However, you're going to see this and this. / and asterisk if I am typing it on the computer. Alright, for divide, we are doing deer. Okay, next, addition. Addition looks like this. Doesn't matter what I'm typing it on, I actually have a plus sign at the top of my screen. So it will be a plus. And we're going to say for add, ant. And for subtract, again, subtraction symbols. That's just what they are. Sally. And so we have grouping exponents multiply or divide, add or subtract is the same as Grandma excused my dear Aunt Sally. Now, for me, I use parentheses, and this, of course, is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So it's just a little bit different. You know, if you want to use grouping and call it Grandma, that's fine. If you want to use parentheses and please, this is just to help you remember the order. Okay, this is not anything that you actually have to remember. It's a mnemonic that helps you remember things. So if you can remember that Grandma excused my dear Aunt Sally, then you can remember GEMDAS. Grouping, exponent, multiply or divide, add or subtract. Next part. So we need to practice doing exactly what we just said. So we find our parentheses in our equation first, starting from the left, going to the right. We see we have a 5 minus 3. So we want to adjust that 5 minus 3. So we say 4 plus, and then we have the 5, and this is our grouping here. So let's group first. 5 minus 3 becomes a 2. Pretty simple. Now, this, with just a number outside of it, means multiply. So now, we just have this 2 here. Okay? Now we want to look for exponents and get those out of our equation. Okay, so we come over here and we say exponents. And let's go find those exponents. We see we have 3 squared, and it's a 9, because that means 3 times 3. We do that twice, so 3 times 3. Now, we still have the minus 9, we still have the plus 2, we still have the multiplying the 4, and the 3 over here. So what do we want to pull out next? Well, it says M, so we want to pulling out multiplying and dividing at the same time. So we want to look for multiplying and dividing from the left to the right at the same time. So 3 plus 4, no. 4 times 2, yes. That's the first one. So we bring down, we multiply there, and see how it's just shrinking. So we found that multiplication. Now we're going to see, do we have another one? 3 plus 8 plus 9 minus 9, no. Now I'm looking, I don't have any multiplying and I don't have any division. So now I come down and I say adding or subtracting. Well, yes, I have some adding and subtracting. I have adding here, so we're going to add something. 3 plus 8 gives me 11 plus 9 minus 9. And I'm going to add again. And I get 20, because 11 plus 9 gives me 20, minus 9. And I know that now I'm going to subtract, because that's all that's left, which leaves me with 11. All right, so that's what we do. That's how this works. Pretty straightforward. Always remember to start on the left and work your way to the right, and put them in this order. Let's flip it over. Do the other side. And it says, Faustino hikes up a cliff. He starts his hike at 30 feet below sea level. At the end of his hike, he is at 1,980 feet above sea level. How many total feet did Faustino climb during his hike? Well, looking at this, we just have to do the math, right? So he starts his hike at 30 feet below sea level. So that was a negative. At the end of his hike, he is at 1,980 feet above sea level. So we are going to say he went above sea level. So he started here and he went up to 1,980 feet. How many total feet did Faustino climb during his hike? Well, we know that 0 has to be in here somewhere, and we have to get back to 0 first. So we can add or subtract depending on how we set this problem up. I have my own way. You'll develop your own way. But we know that from here to here is 30. So we want to say 30 to get to 0, because he started down here and he worked his way to 0, so we know we had to add 30. Then he went from 0 up to 1,980. So we have to add another 1,980. And we can actually just add this up and see what we get. So that's going to be 11, 10. So 2,010 feet. Pretty straightforward. Next problem. We have Gemma bought 5 pairs of pants. Each pair of pants cost $17. Which integer correctly shows how Gemma paid for her pants? Well, they were $17 apiece. She bought 5 pairs. Let's find out how much she paid, right? How much did she pay for her pants? Well, 5 times 7 and 5 times 1 plus the 3. Right? So we have $85 that she paid. What would be the correct, then, integer? Well, it's going to be $85. Right? Next. What is the value of this expression? Remember, an expression doesn't have an equal sign. It's just an expression altogether. So we say, what is the value of the expression? Well, I'm going to do parentheses, a -6, okay, a -2, yep, oh, -8 divided by 4. So I need to finish this. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. I have a negative with a positive, so I keep the negative. I have a negative here and a negative here. This means multiply. So we're going to make this a multiplication problem. So I have -6 times -2 plus a -2. So we're going to do this parentheses right here and deal with these two. And 6 times 2 is 12. negative times a negative is a positive plus negative 2. So now I have 12 plus negative 2, and as we've discussed, we can switch these two signs very easily and say a 12 minus 2, and that gives me 10. Okay, next one. Which expression has a value of a negative 23? Well, I want to get to 23. I'm going to start in the easiest place I see, and I see right here, let's see, 6 times 2 is 12. That's a negative times a positive, so we keep the negative. Do the opposite of subtract 13. And I'm going to figure out the difference. And 1, see, so positive was the larger number. Then, here we go. 33 divided by a negative 3. That's pretty simple and straightforward. I want to figure this part out, so I'm going to say 8 minus a negative 13 plus 33 divided by 3 is 11, and one of them is negative, so we keep the negative. All right. Let's now see all adding and subtracting, so let's turn this into adding. Opposite of subtracting 13. And swap those two. Now I can say 13 plus, or 8 plus 13 gives me 21. Minus 11 gives me a 10. So that wasn't it. Let's see. Negative 3 plus a negative 13, adding same signs, minus the negative 3, which means do the opposite, minus 1. So I say negative 16 plus the 8. Putting those together, I subtract. I'm going to get an 8. I keep the sign of the larger. I still have the minus 1. That means I can add a negative. So a negative 8 and a negative 1 become a negative 9. That didn't do it for us. And now, nice and easy. Multiply. Right? 5 times 2 is 10. Keep that negative sign. Subtract 13. Again, I can say negative 10 plus a negative 13 gives me a negative 23. So there it is. Negative 23. All right, guys. Work on your math practices and get these all finished up and turned in, and let us know if you have any questions. I'll catch you guys later.